The morning sun cast long shadows across the Thracian fields as two armies faced each other in silence. The Ottoman forces stood in perfect formation, each soldier maintaining rigid discipline despite the weight of armor and weapons. Their training had prepared them for this moment, when the fate of empires would be decided by steel and strategy. Across the battlefield, the Crusader knights gathered their strength, their banners proud against the sky. Among the Ottoman ranks stood Mehmed, barely 19 but already a veteran of 3 campaigns. His hands gripped his spear with practiced ease, muscles coiled like springs beneath his armor. Years of drilling had burned discipline into his very bones, transforming him from a Christian boy into an instrument of war. He had learned that victory belonged not to the strongest warrior, but to the most disciplined army. The Crusader knights sat astride their warhorses with aristocratic confidence, their gleaming armor a testament to wealth and status. Each knight represented generations of martial tradition, trained since childhood to believe themselves superior to any opponent. Their heavy cavalry had crushed countless enemies throughout the centuries, and today would prove no different. Or so they believed. Grand Vizier Piri Pasha watched from his vantage point, his decades of military experience reading the situation like an open book. He had served 4 sultans and won battles across 3 continents, understanding that discipline and timing mattered more than individual valor. The knights would charge soon, their horses thundering across the field, but the Ottomans would remain steadfast until the perfect moment arrived. The silence stretched like a bowstring ready to snap, broken only by the occasional creak of armor or snort of impatient horses. Thousands of warriors stood motionless, each army representing different worlds and beliefs. The Crusaders trusted in their noble heritage and divine right to victory, while the Ottomans placed their faith in rigorous training and unwavering discipline. Only one philosophy would survive this day. With a thunderous roar that shook the earth itself, the Crusader cavalry surged forward like a tidal wave of steel and muscle. Their warhorses galloped at full speed, hoofs pounding the ground in rhythmic destruction. The knights lowered their lances, points gleaming deadly in the morning light, confident that their momentum would pulverize any resistance. This was their moment of glory, their chance to prove the superiority of Western arms. The ground trembled beneath thundering hooves as death itself galloped toward them, yet not a single Ottoman soldier flinched from his position. Years of drilling had taught them that panic meant death, while discipline meant survival. They stood like stone pillars against the storm, their spears angled forward in perfect synchronization. The knights saw only stationary targets, but they faced something far more deadly than scattered enemies. Mehmed's heart hammered against his ribs like a caged bird, but his training held firm against primal fear. The charging knights filled his entire vision, their warhorses seeming to blot out the sky itself. He could see the individual rivets on their armor, the deadly points of their lances, the fierce determination in their eyes. Yet his spear remained steady, his feet unmoving, his breathing controlled. This was what discipline meant. The moment of impact was both terrible and beautiful, a masterpiece of military precision executed with deadly efficiency. Dozens of knights found themselves suddenly airborne, lifted from their saddles by spear points that had found gaps in their armor. Their warhorses crashed into the unyielding wall, steel meeting steel with bone-shattering force. Blood sprayed across the morning light as momentum met immovable discipline. Silence fell across the battlefield like a shroud, broken only by the groans of wounded men and dying horses. Where moments before had thundered the finest cavalry in Christendom, now lay broken bodies and scattered armor. The Ottomans remained in perfect formation, their discipline unshaken by the carnage they had wrought. The knights had learned the hard truth that individual courage meant nothing against collective discipline. Sir Robert de Montfort coughed blood onto the churned earth, his expensive armor now a prison of pain and defeat. Just moments before, he had charged at the head of his retainers, certain of victory and glory. Now he struggled to rise, his legs shattered by impact with the unforgiving ground. The same discipline that had seemed like mere peasant obedience had proven itself superior to aristocratic valor. Grand Vizier Piri Pasha raised his saber high, the signal that would seal the fate of the Crusader army. His weathered face showed no mercy, only the satisfaction of a master tactician whose plan had succeeded perfectly. The disciplined infantry that had withstood the charge would now become the hammer that crushed their enemies. The knights had learned too late that warfare had evolved beyond individual heroics. Like a slow but inevitable tide, the Ottoman infantry advanced across the field, their formation unbroken despite the chaos around them. Each soldier moved in perfect synchronization with his comrades, creating an unstoppable force that brooked no resistance. The knights who had survived the charge now found themselves facing the same disciplined wall that had destroyed their momentum, but this time it came to claim their lives. Mehmed found himself running now, his legs pumping across the bloody ground as he pursued the fleeing knights. His spear was slick with enemy blood, but his training kept him focused on the task ahead. The scattered crusaders had no formation, no discipline, no hope. They ran like frightened animals while the janissaries hunted them with the precision of trained wolves. The last dozen knights stood back to back in a shrinking circle, their noble bearing unbroken despite the blood and defeat that surrounded them. They had charged with the confidence of lords and died with the dignity of warriors. Now they faced their inevitable end with the same pride that had brought them to this field, refusing to surrender even as the Ottoman ring closed around them like a steel embrace. The end came quickly and efficiently, as discipline always does. The knights fought with the courage of their ancestors, their swords flashing in desperate arcs, but they faced an enemy that moved as one body with one mind. Each Ottoman soldier knew his role perfectly, striking when and where he was needed, retreating when threatened, advancing when opportunity presented itself. Individual valor could not match collective precision. When the sun reached its zenith, the field told the complete story of what discipline could accomplish. Where once had stood proud knights and their magnificent warhorses, now lay broken bodies and scattered dreams of glory. The Ottomans moved among the carnage with practiced efficiency, collecting weapons and armor while maintaining their formations. They had proven that warfare belonged not to the brave, but to the disciplined. Grand Vizier Piri Pasha allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he gazed upon the field of victory. He had served the Ottoman Empire for 40 years, winning battles from the Danube to the Euphrates, but this engagement had been particularly instructive. The Western Knights had learned the hard lesson that individual courage, no matter how noble, could not overcome the collective strength of perfect discipline and unified purpose. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Mehmed finally allowed himself to feel the exhaustion that discipline had kept at bay. His muscles ached from maintaining perfect posture throughout the morning's ordeal, and his hands trembled slightly from the adrenaline that still coursed through his veins. Yet even in rest, he sat with the same military bearing that had saved his life, knowing that discipline was not just a tactic but a way of being. The Ottoman officers gathered around the captured equipment with the curiosity of scholars examining ancient texts. The Crusader armor was indeed magnificent, crafted by the finest smiths in Europe, yet it had proven insufficient against disciplined infantry tactics. They noted the weight of the armor, the balance of the weapons, the heraldic symbols that marked each piece. Knowledge of their enemy's strengths and weaknesses would serve them well in future campaigns. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, the Ottoman army resumed its march with the same precision that had won them victory. They carried captured weapons and equipment, but their formations remained unbroken, their discipline undiminished. The abandoned Crusader camp stood empty behind them, a testament to the difference between armies that fought as individuals and those that moved as one unstoppable force. The Ottoman army flowed across the landscape like a river of disciplined steel, their formations perfect despite the miles they had already marched that day. Each soldier moved in synchronization with his comrades, creating patterns of military precision that had no equal in the Western world. They were not merely an army but a living embodiment of the principle that unity and discipline could overcome any obstacle. Young Osman carried his unit's standard with the pride of one who understood its meaning. The banner represented not just his particular company but the entire Ottoman philosophy of warfare, that individual soldiers, when properly trained and disciplined, became something greater than the sum of their parts. Each thread of the standard's fabric had been woven with purpose, each symbol carefully chosen to inspire the discipline that had just proven itself superior to Western arms. The captured knights sat in dejected silence, their fine clothing replaced by simple tunics, their proud bearing reduced to the posture of defeated men. They had awakened that morning as lords of war, confident in their superiority, yet now they faced their conquerors with the same discipline that had destroyed them. The Ottoman guards watched them with the same professional detachment they showed everything else, understanding that victory belonged to systems, not individuals. Commander Selim raised his voice above the murmur of conversation, his decades of service lending weight to every word he spoke. He reminded his soldiers that today's victory was but one step in a greater campaign, that discipline and unity would serve them well in the battles yet to come. The men listened with the attention of students to a master, understanding that their success depended not on individual heroics but on collective adherence to proven principles. As darkness approached, the Ottoman camp arose like a city built by military architects, each tent and fire placed with mathematical precision. The soldiers moved about their evening tasks with the same discipline that had won them victory, understanding that military success depended on attention to every detail. They ate at designated times, maintained their weapons with ritual care, and stood guard with unwavering attention. Their enemies had learned that warfare was not about moments of glory but about consistent excellence. Within the lamplight of their field headquarters, the Ottoman officers pored over maps and reports with the methodical attention of chess masters planning their next move. They discussed the disposition of enemy forces, the terrain of potential battlefields, and the tactical lessons learned from that morning's engagement. Every detail mattered, every possibility had to be considered, because they understood that discipline in planning was as important as discipline in battle. Mem sat cross-legged in his tent, his whetstone moving across his spear point with the same precision that had saved his life that morning. He understood that discipline extended beyond the battlefield into every aspect of military life, from the care of weapons to the arrangement of personal effects. His fellow soldiers rested around him, but he continued his work, knowing that tomorrow might bring another test of the principles that had proven themselves superior to Western arms. Even in darkness, the Ottoman camp maintained its military precision, with sentries standing motionless at their posts while their comrades rested in perfect order. No detail was left to chance, no position left unguarded, because they understood that discipline meant vigilance at all times. The Western Knights had learned that morning that individual courage could not match collective preparation, and now they would learn that this principle extended to every moment of military life. The soldiers shared their evening meal with the same precision that characterized all their activities, each man receiving his portion in turn, each group eating in designated areas. They spoke quietly of the day's events, analyzing the tactical lessons learned and discussing the performance of different units. Even their conversation reflected the discipline that had won them victory, focused on improvement rather than celebration, on learning rather than glory. Commander Selim studied the casualty reports with the careful attention of a father counting his children, each name representing a life lost in service to the empire. He felt satisfaction at their tactical success but concern for the families of the fallen. The Western Knights had learned that warfare was not about individual honor but about collective responsibility, and now he understood that victory came with the heavy burden of caring for those who made it possible. Dawn brought the same precision to the Ottoman camp that had characterized every other moment of their campaign. The soldiers arose at designated times, checked their equipment with ritual care, and assembled in perfect formations without the need for shouted commands. They had learned that discipline was not just a tactic for battle but a way of life that made every moment more efficient, every action more effective, every victory more certain. The Ottoman army flowed across the landscape like a river of steel and determination, their formations perfect despite the miles they had already marched. They carried with them not just weapons and supplies but the proven principles that had destroyed the Crusader Knights. Each soldier understood that they were not merely marching toward new battles but toward the inevitable demonstration that discipline and unity could overcome any opposition, no matter how noble or well-equipped. As the Ottoman army disappeared over the distant horizon, they carried with them the lesson that had been learned and taught that day. The Western Knights had awakened believing in individual valor and noble heritage, but they had discovered that warfare belonged to those who understood that strength came not from the courage of individuals but from the discipline of unified purpose. The Ottomans marched on, their formations perfect, their principles proven, their victory complete. The field remained as a testament to the power of disciplined warfare, with every detail of the engagement speaking to the superiority of collective training over individual valor. The Ottoman soldiers worked with the same precision and victory as they had shown in battle, organizing captured equipment, tending the wounded, and preparing for the next campaign. They had proven that military success came not from moments of glory but from consistent adherence to proven principles. Sir Geoffrey de Brabant sat in contemplative silence, his mind struggling to understand how the disciplined infantry had destroyed his cavalry charge. He had charged with the confidence of generations of knightly tradition, yet he had been stopped by soldiers who moved as one body with one purpose. The lesson was clear, even if it contradicted everything he had been taught about warfare and honor. Young Osman carried his standard with increased pride, understanding now that the symbols he bore represented more than mere decoration but the very principles that had won them victory. Each thread of the banner spoke to the importance of unity, each symbol reminded the soldiers of their collective purpose. They were not merely carrying cloth and metal but the embodiment of tactical philosophy that had proven itself superior to Western arms. The Ottoman officers studied the captured equipment with the detached interest of engineers examining failed machinery, noting the weight, balance, and construction of each item. They understood that their enemy's armor was indeed magnificent, their weapons expertly crafted, yet these advantages had proven insufficient against disciplined infantry tactics. The lesson was clear: superior equipment meant nothing without superior training and unity of purpose. Even their supply train moved with the same precision that had won them victory, each wagon in its designated position, each guard maintaining his assigned post. The Ottoman army understood that warfare was not just about moments of combat but about the systematic application of military principles to every aspect of campaign life. Their enemies had learned that individual courage could not match the efficiency of collective organization. The Ottoman army flowed across the landscape like a river of disciplined steel, their formations perfect despite the miles they had already marched. They carried with them not just weapons and supplies but the proven lesson that warfare belonged to those who understood that strength came from unity of purpose rather than individual valor. Each soldier moved in perfect synchronization with his comrades, creating an unstoppable force that brooked no resistance. Grand Vizier Piri Pasha gazed upon his army with the satisfaction of a master craftsman viewing his completed work. He had served 4 sultans and won battles across 3 continents, understanding that true military success came not from individual heroics but from the systematic application of proven principles. The Western knights had learned the hard way that discipline and unity could overcome any opposition, no matter how well equipped or noble. The soldiers rested with the same precision that had saved their lives in battle, each man finding his designated position, each group maintaining proper spacing and security. They spoke quietly of the previous day's engagement, analyzing the tactical decisions that had led to victory and discussing how they might improve their performance in future battles. They understood that discipline extended beyond the battlefield into every moment of military life. The Ottoman army advanced toward the fortified city with the same precision that had destroyed the Crusader knights, their formations unbroken despite the challenging terrain. They carried with them not just siege equipment but the proven principles that had already demonstrated their superiority over Western arms. The city's walls might seem formidable, but they faced an enemy that understood warfare was not about individual courage but about collective discipline and systematic application of tactical knowledge. The Ottoman army settled around the city like a steel ring closing around its prey, their camp laid out with the same precision that had won them victory in open battle. They understood that siege warfare required the same discipline and unity that had destroyed the Crusader cavalry, that success came not from individual heroics but from systematic application of proven principles. The defenders looked down upon them from their walls, unaware that they faced an enemy whose tactical philosophy had already proven itself superior to Western arms. Mem studied the city walls with the analytical eye of a chess master examining his opponent's position, noting the strength of the fortifications while considering the tactical principles that had already served his army so well. He had learned that discipline and unity could overcome any obstacle, that individual courage meant nothing against systematic application of proven tactics. The walls might seem formidable, but they faced an army that had already proven its superiority through methodical warfare. The Ottoman engineers studied the city walls with the methodical precision that had characterized every aspect of their campaign, noting the height and thickness of the fortifications while considering the tactical principles that had already proven themselves victorious. They understood that siege warfare required the same discipline and unity that had destroyed the Crusader knights, that success came not from individual heroics but from systematic application of proven military science. The siege began with the same precision that had won them victory in open battle, each soldier moving to his designated position, each piece of equipment placed according to proven tactical principles. The Ottoman army understood that warfare was not about moments of individual glory but about systematic application of military science. The defenders looked down upon them from their walls, unaware that they faced an enemy whose disciplined approach had already proven itself superior to Western arms. The Ottoman archers unleashed their arrows with the same precision that had saved their lives in cavalry combat, their volleys flying in perfect synchronization to keep the defenders pinned behind their walls. They understood that individual accuracy meant nothing compared to collective discipline, that their success came from systematic application of proven tactical principles. Each arrow was part of a larger pattern of warfare that had already demonstrated its superiority over Western arms. The city's defenders gazed down upon the Ottoman siege operations with growing unease, watching their enemies move with the same precision that had already destroyed the Crusader knights. They had awakened that morning confident in their fortifications, believing that walls and towers would protect them from any assault. Now they faced an enemy that understood warfare was not about individual courage but about systematic application of proven military principles. The city walls fell before the same disciplined advance that had destroyed the Crusader cavalry, the Ottoman soldiers scaling the ramparts with the precision that had saved their lives in open battle. They understood that individual heroics meant nothing compared to collective unity, that their success came from systematic application of proven tactical principles. The defenders had learned too late that fortifications alone could not stop an army whose discipline had already proven itself superior to Western arms. The city's final defenses crumbled before the same disciplined advance that had proven itself victorious throughout the campaign, the Ottoman soldiers moving with the precision that had saved their lives in every engagement. They understood that warfare belonged not to the brave but to the disciplined, that individual courage meant nothing compared to collective unity of purpose. The defenders had learned the same hard lesson as their Crusader allies, that systematic application of proven principles could overcome any opposition. As the sun reached its zenith over the conquered city, the Ottoman forces set about organizing their victory with the same precision that had won them the engagement. They understood that military success extended beyond the battlefield into every aspect of campaign life, that discipline and unity were required not just for combat but for administration and control. The defenders had learned that warfare was not about moments of individual glory but about systematic application of proven principles. Grand Vizier Piri Pasha gazed upon the conquered city with the satisfaction of a master tactician whose principles had once again proven themselves victorious. He had served 4 sultans and won battles across 3 continents, understanding that true military success came not from individual heroics but from systematic application of proven principles. The Western defenders had learned the same lesson as their Crusader allies, that discipline and unity could overcome any opposition, no matter how well fortified or noble. As the Ottoman army prepared to resume their march, they carried with them not just weapons and supplies but the proven lesson that warfare belonged to those who understood that strength came from unity of purpose rather than individual valor. Each soldier moved in perfect synchronization with his comrades, creating an unstoppable force that had already demonstrated its superiority over Western arms. The conquered city stood behind them as a monument to the tactical principles that had brought them victory, while new horizons beckoned with the promise of further demonstrations of disciplined warfare.